Hello, welcome to another book review. I'm your host, Kristen, and today I'll be reviewing the YA fantasy book, House of Night, Destined, by PC and Kristen Cast. In case you're interested in reading this book afterward, content warnings in this book are blood, violence, ableism, racism, exotification, slurs, sexism, transphobia, murder, sexual assault, abuse, sex shaming, gore, and homophobia. For this review, I will start with the overall plot, then world building, and finally the characters. There will also be spoilers in this review. Let's begin! Now that Neferet has a vessel as a gift from the White Bull, she decides to name the vessel Aurochs and use him to cause chaos throughout the school. Neferet also hires more human staff in a bid to cause conflict between the vampires and humans. She also forces all the red fledglings, even the bad ones, to attend school so that they will spy for her. Meanwhile, Zoe and Co. are trying to prove that Neferet murdered Zoe's mother to obtain the vessel. Thantos, who has arrived from the High Council to monitor Neferet's behavior, suggests performing a death ritual in order to see if Zoe's accusations are true. Although this plot starts out running, with Neferet and Aurochs brutally murdering two men at night, it quickly slows to its usual crawl. There is no excitement in trying to figure out who killed Zoe's mother because the audience already knows that Neferet is guilty. Other than that, however, the rest of the cast merely stands around until the plot nudges them forward. In other words, these characters have little to no agency. It doesn't help that the chaos Neferet tries to cause is a minor inconvenience at best. Also, while I'm on the topic, why are these books still rated young adult? YA books are mostly marketed for those between 13 to 17. However, the scene where Aurochs kills the two men is extremely graphic. This also goes for the rest of the books, which are filled with gratuitous implied sex, and when there is action, there is always gore. If this book is going to go that far, it should be marketed at least new adult. For world building, there are 3 new concepts introduced. The first one is that Aurochs is an imperfect vessel. Since he was created using a flawed person, this allowed his spirit to slip into the vessel and for Aurochs to gain thought. The second detail introduced is true sight, where a newly marked fledgling gains the ability to see auras. In this case, auras measure a person's soul and mood. The more murky an aura, the more murky the emotions are. However, these auras must be interpreted accurately, or else the fledgling may see issues where there are none. Finally, the third concept is a death ritual. It is similar to circle casting, except there must be a sacrifice in order to close it, and it shows the death of the person the circle was cast for. Throughout most of the book, Zoe tries to help figure out who killed her mother, along with reporting Neferet to the High Council. Normally, this would be fine, since Zoe is taking action to impact the plot, which gives her agency. However, all the excitement is sucked out of the plot since the reader already knows who did it. With the second point, Zoe reporting Neferet was simply the same old song and dance, of Zoe accusing Neferet but having no actual proof, or the High Council being stupid. For this book, Shani actually has a small arc. This is a little surprising, given that she has been a background character since around book 3. However, Shani's arc falls flat in that it doesn't impact the plot at all, besides her giving Clone a cell phone, which any character could have done. For her arc, it is revealed that Shani has a rocky relationship with her father, which contradicts the earlier books. This causes her to have a falling out with Eren, who cannot relate, nor does she want to deal with those emotions. Worse, this arc is used to help her to contribute to starting to redeem Kelowna. Shaylin is a newly marked red fledgling gifted with the power of true sight. Normally, a new background character with the power would be fine. However, before being marked, Shaylin was blind. She was also marked as a red fledgling, so not only did the authors make a blind character regain sight, as well as describing blindness as the worst thing ever, but since Shaylin is a red fledgling, it is outright stated that she was broken and automatically rejected the first change. So yeah, nothing but pure ableism from this character. Kelowna's whole arc in this book is him learning to be a good father. That's the only part. He doesn't try to make up for all the sexual assault he committed, nor the other acts of hurt he has caused. No, he just needs to learn to have basic decency towards his children in order to be partially redeemed. Worse, everyone literally accepts that, and anyone who doesn't is seen as turning to the bad side. In other words, no one is allowed to be mad at Kelowna for all his brainwashing, sexual assault, or murder. As a character, Aurochs starts out okay with mindlessly following Neferet's orders. When he eventually gains more thought and starts asking questions, it becomes more interesting. I get what the authors were going for in that a conflicted Aurochs, who is being controlled against his will, is trying to find out where he stands in terms of light and darkness. However, the authors completely ruin it when Aurochs almost sexually assaults a student out of his own free will. It is also disgusting that even though said student withdrew consent, she is still victim blamed and told to walk away gracefully. Besides murdering Zoe's mom, along with the two men at the start of the book, once again, Neferet rarely does anything evil. The only other action she commits throughout the book, besides a weak attempt to kill Zoe, is at the very end. She controls Aurochs using threads of darkness to stop the death ritual at all costs, besides killing Zoe or Stevie Ray. This results in Dragon sacrificing his life to save Requiem. However, Neferet does not succeed in her goal, so her intervening never really puts the characters in any danger. In short, Neferet never really does her job properly as the antagonist. Overall, I give this book 1 star. The plot started out strong, but completely face-planted after a few chapters. The characters were all unlikable and barely drove the story. Most of it was just rehashing again, and it was very frustrating. I hope the next book is okay.